Thank you. Could I ask those members who are leaving the chamber to please do so quickly and quietly, as we are about to move on to our final item of business. And the final item of business this evening is a members' business debate on motion 15947 in the name of Kenneth Gibson on compensation for the WASPI women. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put, and I would invite those members who would wish to speak in the debate to please press the request to speak buttons, and I call on Kenneth Gibson to open the debate. Up to 7 minutes, please.
Presiding Officer, I also thank those SNP and Green MSPs who signed my motion to enable this debate to happen and aid Scotland and close the gap for their briefings. Members are shocked and disgusted by what can only be seen as a betrayal of everything the Labour Party MPs and MSPs have told us while they were in opposition. Instead of going after all those who fraudulently claim money for inadequate PPE, for example, they decided to target the vulnerable and already penalised WASPI women. Lying, untrustworthy hypocrites is the best description of how we feel about the Labour Party now. Not my words, but those of Ayrshire WASPI and the Ardrossan and Saltcoats Herald last month. Women were undoubtedly angry and frustrated at the decision of Liz Kendall MP, Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, not to compensate them. For a decade, Women Against State Pension Inequality campaigners and their supporters have demanded justice. This WASPI debate is the fifth we've had at Holyrood. At Westminster, it was the last issue debated before the UK general election on a motion brought by former SNP North Ayrshire MP Beatrice Wishart, who spoke on WASPI in the Commons 46 times. For those unaware, the 1995 Pensions Act and the 2011 Pensions Act saw the state pension age for women born in the 1950s change from 60 to 65 and then 66. Yet 3.8 million women across the UK, 336,000 in Scotland and 26,430 in Ayrshire impacted were not given proper notice. Many women only received a letter advising them of the changes within 1 year or less of their expected state pension age of 60. Some found themselves retiring from employment on a Friday, only to find they couldn't claim their pension the following Monday, but would have to wait up to 6 more years. Most older women were already at greater risk of poverty due to earning lower pay during their working lives, having interrupted careers to raise families. Many also had caring responsibilities. The Pensioners Policy Institute last year found that by their late 50s, women's pension wealth is less than two-thirds of men, due to being paid less than the National Insurance lower earnings limit. All MSPs will have heard from constituents about the devastating impact raising women's pension age without due notice has had on their lives. Abandoning plans to care for elderly or infirm relatives, being forced into low-paid, insecure work, and women pushed into poverty as what savings they had dwindled away. Take a case previously raised in this chamber by Neil Bibby. In 2012, his constituent was told by the Department of Work and Pensions that her state pension age had not changed. It then did change to 63.5, then to 65 in 3 months. She was given no notice to prepare. A woman who contacted Pauline McNair after working all her life became unwell at 58 and discovered by accident that the age which she had expected to receive her pension at, 60, had increased to 66. It's undeniable that successive UK governments failed to grasp the detrimental impact on millions of women. Former Pensions Minister Baroness Ros Altman said that then Secretary of State Ian Duncan Smith MP allegedly refused to engage with affected women, saying that they would go away sooner or later. Well, they're still here in our public gallery, in fact, and their voices are still being heard. After one of the most tenacious and determined grassroots campaigns in recent memory, WASPI women believed they were slowly winning against Whitehall intransigence. In March 2024, a comprehensive investigation by the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman damned the DWP and vindicated WASPI campaigners. The DWP was found guilty of maladministration, and the Ombudsman made clear that affected women should be compensated. A major factor in the Ombudsman's conclusions came from the DWP's failure to react appropriately to research findings and recommendations. An internal DWP memo references a survey that found half of women whose state pension age had risen thought it was 60. The memo proposed a direct mail to this group is the most appropriate way of minimising the risk of future criticism that the Department has not been sufficiently proactive in communicating to those women affected by the change in state pension age. Research showed the target audience has a strong preference for printed material, being generally positive towards direct mail and particularly its presentation. So in December, when Ms Kendall said 90% of WASPI women knew about the change to their pension age, and the Secretary of State then flatly rejected compensation, the shock, anger and sense of duplicity felt by WASPI women was all too real. However, even if Ms Kendall was right, she's not, and 90% of women did know, that would still leave 380,000 women in the UK, 33,000 in Scotland and hundreds in my own constituency to be compensated. The UK Labour Government is offering nothing. No wonder emotions are so raw. For years, Labour politicians, including Sir Keir Starmer and Chancellor Rachel Reeves, happily stood alongside WASPI women in their campaign placards demanding fair and fast compensation. To add insult to injury, Ms Kendall herself openly campaigned for WASPI and was photographed signing WASPI pledges and affirming her support. To go from this to her statement on 17 December is an astonishing political metamorphosis. The Labour Government is not just ruling out compensation in any form, awful as that is. Ms Kendall argued that giving women proper notice of the changes wouldn't have made a difference, thereby shamefully seeking to repudiate the entire premise of the WASPI campaign. In shrugging off an SNP MP's question, the Secretary of State echoed a suggestion previously made by Jackie Baillie, Labour's Deputy Leader in this Parliament. If you don't like it, mitigate it yourselves. Such comments show wilful ignorance of Section 28 of the Scotland Act 2016, which prohibits the Scottish Parliament from such action, as the Smith Commission report specifically stated that all aspects of pension provision should remain reserved. Presiding Officer, the DWP knew a massive cohort of women were unaware of changes to their pensions, knew it should write to them, knew it would make a difference. Ms Kendall's attempt at rewriting history and blaming the WASPI women for being unaware of these changes deserves only our contempt. Ombudsman conclusions result from a rigorous, impartial investigation that unequivocally confirm DWP failings. They are not advisory suggestions to be conveniently ignored. Governments have a duty to act with fairness and integrity, acknowledge mistakes and rectify them once discovered. When that duty is abdicated, as we see here, it erodes trust not just in the political party involved, but in government institutions more widely. Failure to uphold Ombudsman recommendations sets a terrible precedent that the UK Government can disregard their own failings and those wronged can be dismissed and ignored. WASPI women deserve better. It's estimated that more than 300,000 have died since the campaign began. Another dies every 13 minutes. I urge MSPs across the chamber to unite in demanding justice, meaning compensation without delay. To WASPI women listening to this debate, the SNP stands with you. We will ensure your voices are heard until you receive the justice and compensation you deserve.
Thank you, Mr Gibson. A few housekeeping issues I think I should mention at this point. Firstly, I would say to our members in the gallery, you are very welcome indeed to be here this evening in what is your Parliament, but in terms of our rules of procedure, we don't have members of the public in the gallery clapping, but I hope you'll appreciate that I'm required to point that out. Secondly, obviously there's a lot of interest in this debate, and I would remind backbenchers who have pressed to speak that it is speeches of up to 4 minutes. And thirdly, due to the number of members who do wish to speak in this debate, I am minded to accept a motion without notice under Rule 8.14.3 to extend the debate by up to 30 minutes. I now invite Kenneth Gibson to move a motion without notice.
So moved, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Mr Gibson. The question is that the debate be extended by up to 30 minutes. Are we all agreed? That is agreed, and I now call Christine Grahame to be followed by Douglas Ross. Ms Grahame.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Forgive me. I congratulate the member on securing this debate and declare an interest as a pensioner who thankfully just missed out on the changes, but not my sister siblings. In my constituency, as many as 5,630 WASPI women in Midlothian and 8,740 across the borders have lost out, many of whom have tirelessly campaigned for decades to right this wrong. Women of our generations were especially vulnerable to changes in the state pension. Many left work to raise a family, as I did not have a work pension, or did not pay what was known as the big stamp. It was only as retirement loomed we found out how small that pension would be, perhaps having to rely on our husband or partner's pension. Factor in the single, divorced or widowed women. Their future financial security was based on crucially retiring at 60. Now, for too many with these changes to pension rights, they're in poverty. For example, 23% of single female Scottish pensioners live in relative poverty, and 66% of pension credit claimants are women. Now, WASPI women have no argument with equalisation of pension age, but it was the way it was done, compounded by the failure to publicise and inform of the changes. What the Public Health and Services Ombudsman found in his 2023 report, which was confined to the question of maladministration by the DWP, was in informing the women affected. And this is a quote from the report. Quote, "Given the scale of the impact of the DWPs in maladministration and the urgent need for a remedy, we are taking the rare but necessary step of asking Parliament to intervene. We are laying our report before Parliament and asking it to identify a mechanism for providing appropriate remedy for those who have suffered injustice." Close quotes. In other words, not compensation for the lost pension years, and lost pension, that's another matter, which was not its remit, but compensation simply for failure to inform so the women affected could adequately adjust for their financial future. Which brings me to Labour. Now in government, their MPs have erased any of their online comments in support of the WASPI women, just as eagerly as they stood for photo opportunities with the campaigners. I have a question for them, especially for MP Kirsty McNeil, recently elected for Midlothian. Do you support the compensation recommendations for the Ombudsman? Are you ashamed there was not a peep about abandoning the WASPI women pre-election? And for Labour in here now, how will you vote next week when this comes up for debate? I will end with the words of Claire Ramage, who for health reasons took early retirement at 58 and who established the Borders WASPI group, which currently has 168 members simply on their Facebook. Quote, I couldn't say it better, by the way. Quote, "I was told that to get my state pension, that I'd have to apply for it. So at 58, I contacted the DWP to better understand how I go about this. I was then told that I would not get my state pension until I was 66 years old. I was shocked and said, but you never told me, to which they replied, we didn't need to. I felt powerless for the first time in my life. Who was going to fight for me as there was no union to help? I then discovered WASPI and set up a group in the Scottish Borders. Obviously, we now have the Ombudsman's findings, and indeed the DWP did not inform these women about the changes to the pension age to give them time to set up alternative pensions. Finally, it angers me to see how we've been used by the Labour Party, who fully supported us, signed petitions, got their pictures taken. For what? Just votes? Close quotes. Deputy Presiding Officer, I couldn't say it better myself.
Thank you, Ms Grahame. I now call Douglas Ross to be followed by Bob Doris. Mr Ross.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. And can I congratulate Kenneth Gibson for securing this debate. He opened his remarks by thanking SNP and Green members who had supported the motion which allowed it to be taken today. I would have supported it as well, because there is nothing in the motion that I disagree with. I think it's fair to say at the time there was a flurry of motions coming in from SNP members. I supported the motion from Claire Haughey on the 19th of December, which is almost identical wording, because there is nothing I disagree with here. Indeed, I said that in the Chamber on the 1st of May last year when we had a debate on this issue. Could I also welcome the WASPI campaigners to the gallery tonight? I've supported WASPI women in Murray and across the Highlands and Islands since my election. At times that took me at odds with my party. I was the first of the 2017 intake of new Conservative MPs in the Westminster Parliament to vote against the party whip on this issue, because I agree WASPI women were wronged by successive governments of different political persuasions. And I think the fight for justice has taken far too long. Kenny Gibson's right to say how many of his constituents and people across Scotland are still fighting. But sadly, many lost that fight. They have not lived to see the day that the justice they were looking for would be delivered through the PHSO report. And what I find most difficult with the new UK Government's position is they are accepting parts of that report. They accept that there has been fault. They accept that women haven't been given the required notice that they were entitled to and deserve, but they don't accept the compensation bit. Well, I'm sorry, with PHSO reports, we don't get to pick and choose. They are an independent judge. They are in place to try and take the politics out of it, to take away that injustice that is clearly there and come up with a solution. Now, I know that there are WASPI women in Murray and across Scotland who don't believe the PHSO report goes far enough. They don't believe the compensation recommended in that report is sufficient. But for Labour to say they don't deserve any compensation at all, I think is completely wrong. And I thought it was an excellent speech from Christine Grahame, and I agreed with what she said. How can Scottish Labour and Labour politicians, both here in Holyrood and Westminster, reconcile the position they took before the general election, which was to support WASPI women at every opportunity, to the position they are now taking with their party in government, who are refusing women the right to the compensation they deserve? The PHSO didn't look at whether it was right or wrong to change the pension age, and the vast majority, if not every single WASPI campaigner I've spoken to, was not against the changing of the pension age. They were against the way this was communicated, or in most cases not communicated, and how that did not allow them to prepare while they were in work and for retirement. So I think it is incumbent on the UK Government to look at this again. I know my Conservative colleagues at Westminster, some of them have asked for a vote in Westminster. At the moment, the Government won't even give MPs the opportunity to have a division in the House of Commons to see whether this is right or wrong. I think this has been a campaign that has gone on for far too long. Kenny Gibson was right to highlight Patricia Gibson. In the previous debate, I highlighted Carolyn Harris for the Labour Party, who did a lot of work for this. Tim Lawton for the Conservative Party, who did a lot of work on this. Surely now, we can see, after many, many years and thorough, significant investigation by the PHSO, that women did not get the required notice. They deserve compensation. And in my final seconds, I would urge the Government, perhaps next week, because I'll be speaking in the debate, to come up with a motion that I think we should be able to get universal support. When it was debated on the 1st of May last year, Hamza Yousaf, as the then outgoing First Minister, wanted pretty much unlimited compensation. I can understand why he wanted that. If we have a motion next week that simply asks for the compensation advised by the PHSO to be delivered, then the Government can be assured of Scottish Conservative support, and I would hope support of every party in this chamber. We could send a united and unanimous message to the UK Government that the compensation recommended by the PHSO should be delivered, and delivered now. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Mr Ross. I now call Bob Doris to be followed by Katy Clark. Mr Doris.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The battle for WASPI women is not my battle or lived experience. It's the women themselves. So, with that in mind, I spoke earlier today with my constituent Liz. Liz was born in 1953. I know Liz in her capacity as a volunteer at a community hub in Springburn for a charity for which I am a trustee. However, I met Liz late last year, unexpectedly, outside the Scottish Parliament. She came to Holyrood as a WASPI women campaigner. Along with many other women, Liz was there to let MSPs know of the very real anger felt by WASPI women because of the betrayal of the UK Labour government. In the months and years ahead of the UK election, Labour had made it absolutely clear that they supported the cause of WASPI women. They agreed that women born in the 1950s who were not appropriately informed of changes to pensions entitlement and who had suffered financially and in other ways should be compensated. After all, that's what the Independent Ombudsman decided should happen. And as we all know, Labour have since abandoned WASPI women. I mentioned the anger felt by Liz and others towards Labour. Liz told me, "I honestly believe Labour would do something about this." Keir Starmer and Liz Kendall got their photograph with WASPI women, and now they have turned the tables and are doing nothing. They have turned their cheek. That's Liz's words. Liz was very measured, actually, when speaking to me. Yes, there was anger, but there was a dignified determination, a real steel to continue with this campaign and secure justice. She was actually more worried about others rather than herself, I have to say, in speaking with her. UK Government maladministration has caused financial detriment and undermined the well-being of many WASPI women. For much of her working life, Liz held down 3 jobs, juggling hours to ensure she was financially independent within her working life. If appropriately informed, in a meaningful way, and I'll come back to that, she in all likelihood may have made different decisions regarding her finances and her life choices. Liz thinks that she met with a letter once, perhaps in 2012. It was a brief letter, if so, a few lines, no context,
no explanation, no advice on what to do next or how to get appropriate information, no enclosed leaflet with further details. Liz told me that at the time, Liz thought the letter may have been a scam. Liz said to me that she feels the fight has been going on for years, but she became aware of the campaign just a few years ago and joined the campaign group online. Liz said, "I became far more active last year and campaigned at Westminster and now at Holyrood." She also said, "Why is the Ombudsman there if the UK Government can just ignore it?" But importantly, Liz said, "We didn't expect to get everything, but we did expect to get something." She then went on to look at solutions, such as whether WASPI women could get a small supplement into their pension paid each month. Now, I don't know if that's the right thing to do or not, but finding solutions is an important point. But that shouldn't be up to the WASPI women. That's up to the UK Government. Does Labour still believe women should be compensated, but that the public finances make that challenging? If so, let's look together at solutions. Or do they no longer believe in compensating WASPI women? Liz was concerned about women increasingly dying without getting justice. If anyone in Labour still believes in compensating WASPI women, they must act swiftly. Finally, my heartfelt thanks to Liz for sharing her story and views ahead of this debate. I said this was her battle, but it's actually all our battles, but it's her lived experience. And I'll give the final word to Liz once more. She told me earlier this afternoon, "We're all very angry and we're all ready for a fight."
Thank you, Mr Doris. I now call Katy Clark to be followed by Marie McNair. Ms Clark.
Thank you, and I congratulate Kenneth Gibson for securing this debate, and I'm pleased to join calls for the UK Government to reconsider its decision not to award compensation to WASPI women. I'm very pleased about some of the points that have been made in the Chamber today and hope that it will be possible to get a motion next week that all political parties in this Chamber could vote for. And therefore, I agree with SNP and Conservative members when they say that WASPI women have been wronged. I believe that this is a campaign that deserves justice and that we need to continue to do everything we can as individuals and in our political parties to make sure that compensation is provided to WASPI women. As has been said, in 2021, the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman found the Department of Work and Pension guilty of maladministration in handling of the changes to women's state pension age outlined in the 1995 Act. This came as a result of the DWP's failure to properly inform the women involved of increases of up to 6 years in some cases, which left over 3 million women vulnerable to financial stress, uncertainty and instability. More than 4 years since the publication of this report, during which, as has been said, over 270,000 effective women born in the 1950s have died, WASPI women continue to fight for justice and fair repayment, particularly in light of the recent decision to rule a financial compensation scheme against the losses they have faced. The Ombudsman found that approximately 60% of affected women in the early 2000s were not adequately informed that changes to women's state pension would apply to them specifically, nor were sent letters to notify them adequately in advance. These are all matters that have been considered by the Ombudsman. WASPI campaigners have repeatedly campaigned across the country to explain about the lack of proper communication, the lack of a warning to make plans to bridge the financial gap until their retirement, and the financial difficulties that has placed them in. This debate today is obviously taking place because of the announcement before Christmas, and I welcome the apology that was given to WASPI women at that time. I think, however, it was a major mistake to announce and to make the decision that there wouldn't be compensation to WASPI women. There is a debate to be had about the details of any compensation package, and as someone that has been involved in these issues over many years, I'm aware that if there was to be full compensation, that this would be exceptionally costly. But to say after the Ombudsman's report, and to say given the level of loss that many women have suffered, that there should be no compensation at all, is completely unacceptable. I believe that women should not be penalised as a result of past governments' miscommunication. I will continue to do all I can to ensure that WASPI women receive justice, and I look forward to continuing to work on a cross-party basis as convener of the cross-party group and with colleagues across this chamber and indeed within my political party to try and ensure that we get justice for WASPI women.
Thank you, Ms Clark. I now call Marie McNair to be followed by Maggie Chapman. Ms McNair.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm pleased to speak in this debate, and I congratulate my colleague Kenneth Gibson for securing it. And can I too welcome our WASPI women here tonight, and it's great to see women from my own constituency here as well. How society treats pensioners, how we treat those most vulnerable, is a measure of our humanity. The decision by the UK Labour Government not to compensate the WASPI women have worked tirelessly throughout their lives tells us everything we need to know about how the Labour Government values pensioners. Despite the Ombudsman report being clear on the failures of the UK Government and the failures of the DWP in being crystal clear that compensation is owed, the Labour Government has ignored this. This is an appalling decision and a complete betrayal of the WASPI women. These women were robbed of their pension, and there is simply no justification for the UK Government to deny them compensation. In my constituency, this decision will affect more than 4,700 women in Eastern Bartonshire and over 6,000 in Western Bartonshire. Not only does this decision contradict recommendations in the Ombudsman report, but it contradicts what Labour said to get elected in 2024. For years, Labour MPs and MSPs have stated that they support the WASPI women and promise to help deliver justice. And as Sarwar said, under my leadership, WASPI women will finally receive the justice they deserve. Paul O'Kane, just back in May, said Labour is very clear that we support the principles contained in the PHSO report, which includes the principle that we must compensate those women. I could go on and on. Labour promised change, but all the WASPI women got was betrayal and deception. In June, just prior to the general election, I spoke in a WASPI debate brought to the Chamber by my colleague Claire Haughey. In my speech, I said there would be no change under a Labour government, that the Labour Party had decided that WASPI women didn't matter to them anymore. And I'm sure I was not alone in saying that. Only 6 months later, we were proved right. Days after the announcement, I stood in solidarity with WASPI women outside this Parliament, and I look forward to meeting with WASPI women across my constituency in the coming weeks. This decision was a huge and devastating blow to the WASPI women, and I stand firm with them. Time is unfortunately not on their side, and I know many WASPI women have sadly passed away without receiving any compensation. They've received setbacks before, and in the face of it, they remained courageous and determined. But they have put the work in. They have campaigned tirelessly for a decade now. Therefore, it's time for them to see action and to see money in the banks. But with the Labour UK Government, I don't expect to see change anytime soon. So I welcome Katy Clark's contribution tonight, and I urge Katy Clark and her colleagues to put pressure on Keir Starmer, stand up to him, and bring about justice for our WASPI women. Again, we don't want to continue using WASPI women as photo opportunities. We want to stand firm with them. Only time will tell, but it's clear as day and now that only SNP will champion the WASPI women's right for fair and fast compensation. Only the SNP will continue to stand with them and push the UK Government to take action. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms McNair. I call Maggie Chapman to be followed by Karen Adam. Ms Chapman.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I thank Kenny Gibson for securing this debate this evening, and I say hello to the WASPI women in the gallery. You're welcome. I speak this evening for justice. Justice for the WASPI women born in the 1950s who have been so unfairly treated and betrayed by different UK governments. These women who have contributed so much to our society, who have worked hard, raised families, built communities, deserve far better than the injustice they have endured. The Women Against State Pension Inequality campaign is not about rejecting equalisation of pension ages between men and women, as others have already said. It's about fairness, about recognising the unacceptable manner in which the changes of the state pension were implemented, abruptly, unfairly, without adequate notice. The PHSO is clear there was maladministration. Many women were given little or no warning that their state pension age would increase. For some, this meant working for up to 6 years longer than they had planned or prepared for. Women who had worked for decades, often in low-paid, insecure jobs, suddenly found themselves facing financial uncertainty, unable to retire when they had expected, unable to plan for the future. The UK government failed to fulfil its duty to inform these women, to consult with them and to allow them time to adjust to such significant changes in their lives. As a result, millions of women have been left out of pocket, struggling to make ends meet, while their retirement dreams have been shattered. The stories of these women are heart-wrenching. WASPI women in the North East region and elsewhere have shared their pain and frustration of being forced to rely on food banks, unable to heat their homes, or to continue in jobs that are physically or emotionally exhausting. Some have had to take on caregiving responsibilities while simultaneously trying to earn a living, at a time in their lives when they should have been enjoying a well-earned rest. We must not ignore the gendered nature of this injustice. Women already face economic disadvantage throughout their lives. The gender pay gap, inequality of care responsibilities, working in undervalued and underpaid sectors. The mishandling of state pension age changes has only compounded these inequalities. That is why compensation is not just necessary, it's a moral imperative. These women are not asking for charity, they are demanding justice. Just what they are owed after a lifetime of hard work, contribution and sacrifice. The current UK government's refusal to acknowledge its failure and to provide fair compensation to these women is a shameful abdication of responsibility. This is not a question of affordability. It is a question of priorities. If there's money for tax breaks for the wealthy, if there is money for corporate bailouts, and billions of money for corporate bailouts, then there is money to right the wrong and provide WASPI women with fair compensation. Presiding Officer, we don't have powers here in this place to resolve this issue directly, but we have a responsibility to stand in solidarity with WASPI women, to amplify their voices and demand that the UK act, and acts now. Because justice delayed is justice denied. WASPI women have waited long enough. They deserve an apology, they deserve recognition and they deserve compensation. To the WASPI women of Scotland and across the UK, we hear you. We in the Scottish Greens stand with you and we will not stop fighting for your rights, because justice for WASPI women is justice for us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Chapman. I now call Karen Adam to be followed by Beatrice Wishart. Ms Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I too congratulate Kenneth Gibson for securing this debate this evening and welcome the WASPI women to our Parliament. To add context to my contribution today, I feel it's important to primarily set out the circumstances of many women across Scotland, especially those who are of pension age now, and what circumstances may have been for them a few decades ago. We already understand, and it's widely accepted, that women have disproportionately borne the burden of care responsibilities. Women, particularly those in low-income or part-time employment, have long been disadvantaged when it comes to the working environment. And I thank Close the Gap for their briefing, which set out clearly how the pension system was designed around a male breadwinner role model. And this fails to account for the disrupted work patterns of women who have caregiving responsibilities. Although, Presiding Officer, we have moved on in attitude and employment practices to help alleviate this inequality, progress has been slower than acceptable. And at the time that WASPI women were throughout their working years, The world really was a different place. Due to often caring for children and other family members, and usually being the first to sacrifice employment altogether due to family commitments, women retire with significantly less savings than men. On average, women have £123,000 less in pension savings than their male counterparts. A woman aged 25 today would need to work an additional staggering 18 years in full-time employment to retire with the same pension pot as a man. And a stark fact is that 2/3 of pensioners living in poverty are women, and half of them are single. This injustice stems from a series of failures, and the decision to raise the state pension age for women born in the 1950s, implemented without proper communication or consideration for its impact, only exacerbated the impact of these failures. Women were left unprepared and unable to make the necessary financial arrangements, and many faced and continue to face significant hardship as a result. Notwithstanding the emotional distress caused by the woeful handling of this fiasco, the Ombudsman was clear. The women affected are owed compensation. Let me share the story of Olive Sharp. Olive is the coordinator of the Banff-and-Buchan WASPI supporters group. Olive, like thousands of women born in the 1950s, worked hard her entire life. She planned her retirement around the understanding that she would receive her state pension at age 60. That promise was broken, and Olive was left scrambling to cover her expenses when the state pension age rose unexpectedly for her. Now, fast forward to recent months, there was a glimmer of hope offered to these WASPI women. In opposition, Labour promised the world. It was the leader of Scottish Labour who said, "Under my leadership, WASPI women will finally receive the justice they deserve." And yet, after promising the world to get elected, what did Labour offer our WASPI women? Absolutely nothing. Is it that truly what Scottish Labour thinks of WASPI women and what they deserve? Labour said to vote for them for change, and all we have seen is short change. This decision is an affront to justice and perpetuates the systematic inequality that women face in retirement. Olive's story is one of resistance and resilience, but also one of unnecessary hardship. Hardship caused by a failure of governance and a lack of compassion, and her story is one among hundreds of thousands across Scotland. Last night, speaking to Olive Sharp, she urged Labour to reconsider and asked me to put a question to Scottish Labour. Does the current UK government, which has supported the WASPI campaign since the beginning, really wish to add its failure to this maladministration? Presiding Officer, Westminster has shown us yet again that whichever party is elected in London, the people of Scotland, and on this occasion the women of Scotland, are continually let down. It's time that compensation be paid and WASPI women truly get the justice that they deserve.
Thank you, Ms Adam. I now call Beatrice Wishart to be followed by Collette Stevenson. Ms Wishart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and thank you to Kenneth Gibson for bringing this important debate to the Chamber this evening. I think we'll all agree we've heard some excellent speeches. I also want to thank the 1950s women, the WASPI women, some of whom are here tonight, for all their hard work over many years in bringing this injustice to the fore. I too am a 1950s woman. I thought I should declare that in the interests of transparency. In June last year, I spoke in a debate on WASPI compensation after the UK Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman's final report recognised the maladministration and ruling that the women affected should receive compensation. And it feels like Groundhog Day to outline once again why compensation should be paid, and imploring the UK Government to reverse from its stated position that it will not do so. We should recognise the Groundhog Day of those women who acted in a perfectly rational way to make decisions about their lives, planning for one retirement date, unaware that changes to their pension entitlement would cruelly snatch away these plans, many only finding out just before their 60th birthdays. And seemingly all their subsequent campaigning, spanning years for justice, has come to nothing. As a member of the cross-party group on WASPI, I have heard testimony of the impact of the changes, and I've called for compensation of this maladministration, and I will continue to stand with you. The PHSO recommended that the UK Parliament urgently identify a mechanism for providing an appropriate remedy, recommending financial compensation to the women affected. The PHSO itself has described the UK Government's decision not to act on its recommendation as, and I quote, extremely rare. I want to thank Close the Gap for their briefing ahead of this debate and highlight this line, and again I quote, This refusal to provide fair compensation is an injustice which reflects decision-making which penalises women, many of whom are already experiencing low pay and poverty, and sustains systemic gender inequality. Presiding Officer, I cannot help but think that there's an air of misogyny around all the decision-making that has taken us to where we are today. These are women who have worked all their lives, often from the age of 15 or 16, often in low-paid jobs, raising families and with other caring duties, without the financial support women today take for granted, like paid maternity leave and free childcare. My Westminster MP colleague Steve Darling said of Ms Kendall's announcement, and I quote, "The new government has turned its back on millions of pension-age women who were wronged through no fault of their own, ignoring the Independent Ombudsman's recommendations, and that is frankly disgraceful." But it's not simply turning their back, it's ignoring previous support for a remedy by the Labour Party when in opposition. The Conservative Party have ducked their responsibilities too. Having created these changes in the first place, they failed to notify the women that would be affected and left government without any plans to pay any compensation. To conclude, Presiding Officer, blame can be passed between the parties, but it doesn't change the fact that 1950s women have been badly let down, and the only response from the Labour government is tough. That's shameful. But the WASPI voice has not been silenced. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Wishart. I now call Collette Stevenson to be followed by Mochan. Ms Stevenson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I'm grateful to Kenneth Gibson for securing this important debate and calling on the Labour Government to compensate the WASPI women. I also want to pay tribute to everyone involved in WASPI. They have been a formidable campaign force, and it looked like they would be successful in getting a financial remedy for the affected women. Because due to UK Government wrongdoing, millions of women across the UK have lost out in terms of their pensions. Figures from the Scottish Parliament Information Centre reveal that over 21,000 women in South Lanarkshire could be affected. And the timing of this debate comes after the PHSO determined that the UK Government's actions caused injustice and recommended compensation for the women affected. I support fair and fast compensation for 1950s women. That was the pledge Keir Starmer signed when he was in opposition. But, just like many policies, once he got into Downing Street, Sir Keir changed his tune. The Ombudsman determined that DWP decision-making between 2005 and 2007 led to a 28-month delay in starting to send letters to 1950s-born women about state pension age changes, and that these delays were maladministration and led to injustice. Following an evidence session, the chair of the UK Parliament's Work and Pension Committee recommended that the UK Government set up a financial compensation scheme with payments adjusted to reflect the personal impact of pension changes. However, the Labour Government has refused to set up such a scheme, saying that this would be neither fair nor feasible and would not represent good value for taxpayers. As background, it's important to remember that the increase in state pension age for women was brought in by the Tories in the 90s, and then Labour maladministration in the noughties caused more injustice. The fact that the UK Government, despite their admission that a previous Labour Government's delays impacted women, is not giving compensation to WASPI women is an utter shameful betrayal. As well as the Ombudsman, a poll this week found that 3/4 of people think WASPI women should be fairly compensated. There's also a UK Parliament petition on introducing a compensation scheme for WASPI women, which has reached over 150,000 public signatures. And I sincerely hope it gets many, many more. There is clearly public outrage at the UK Government following their decision not to compensate the WASPI women. But what makes this even worse is that Labour MPs stood shoulder to shoulder with WASPI women before they were in power, saying that they supported the campaign and that the women deserved compensation. WASPI Chair Angela Madden has said, and quite rightly so, that this inaction questions the integrity of Labour politicians. And she is right to point out too, that quote, that the Parliamentary Ombudsman is there to hold the Government to account. Labour's decision to ignore it rides roughshod over our constitutional checks and balances. So, to conclude, Presiding Officer, I agree with the WASPI women that the Labour Government is wrong to ignore the Ombudsman's recommendation. It is a shameful betrayal of pensioners, and the UK Government must U-turn and give women affected by state pension inequality the compensation that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Stevenson. I now call Cara Mochan to be followed by George Adam. Ms Mochan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. This is an important debate, bringing this essential issue to the Chamber today, which recognises that clearly and simply the WASPI women deserve compensation. And I welcome the WASPI women in the gallery tonight. When meeting with WASPI women directly, I've heard their story and their fears about the serious impact this disadvantage will have on their life. Their story has moved us all, and it would not be right for me to hide from commitments that I have made in the past. It is impossible to argue that women born between 1950 and 1960 haven't had to fight their whole lives for equality. Many of these women started their working life at a time when workplaces were not structured to support or welcome them. Starting their career at that time means they likely were employed prior to the Equality Act in 1970, and at a time when many would have been expected to leave work when they got married or had children. These women have now been disadvantaged further through serious mismanagement when communicating how they would receive their state pension. This is clear. As we've heard, over 300,000 women in Scotland have been impacted by this scandal. The decision to bring the age forward in the Pension Act of 2011 impacted 2.6 million across the UK, which brought with it, as we've heard, financial and emotional distress for women right across Scotland. Those affected have had to adapt rapidly and, in many cases, completely change their plans for their future retirement, make up for any financial losses if they can actually anticipate what that would have meant. In March 2024, we absolutely have heard in the Chamber tonight that the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman revealed the Government's failing and said that these women deserve compensation. Therefore, I think, and we have heard it in this Chamber tonight, we all agree the refusal from the Government that we have seen thus far to provide any compensation is absolutely unacceptable. Without the ability to properly plan for the future, the emotional impact on these women has taken a concerning toll and for some can become insurmountable. This has serious mental health impacts, which, as a campaign, WASPI has fought repeatedly to expose. There are numerous knock-on effects to the quality of life these women are able to lead now, including serious struggles to afford the necessities of life, whilst also experiencing anger and disappointment towards a system that does not seem to value their contribution at all, a system that does not work for people. Although appropriate, the acknowledgement and apology from the UK Government does nothing for these women who have been short-handed and turned away throughout their lives. We can all recognise the economic disaster the Government has to deal with, but the decades-long fight these women have had to put up in order to expose government failings is not something that an apology is acceptable. It does not rectify such an injustice. In a country where the pension age gap is sitting at 39%, this response from the government is simply not acceptable to WASPI women who have provided so much to our communities and economy. Of course.
Briefly, Christine Grahame.
Just want to commend the member and Katy Clark, because I know it's very difficult when your party has taken a view for you to be so principled in your contribution. I just want you to commend you for it. Thank you.
Always through the chair, Mochan.
I thank the member for her intervention. I really do, and I know my colleague Katy Clark does as well, and other members who are supporting this injustice. It's really important that we have had such a good debate across the chamber and heard such good points. I want to end on the fact that more needs to be done. Compensation needs to be provided, and we all need to stand with the WASPI women until it is secured. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Ms Mochan. I now call George Adam to be followed by Mercedes Villalba. Mr Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And can I thank my friend and colleague Kenneth Gibson for bringing this debate to the chamber here today, and thank the WASPI women who have came along here today and those that continue to campaign in our communities. When you've got a long debate like this, Presiding Officer, it can normally be a bit difficult when you're at the end of the debate to find something to say. But one thing I will say is, Presiding Officer, I'm absolutely sick of this. I am sick of how WASPI women have been treated by the UK Government. I'm sick of lives being ruined by each and every Westminster Government. Westminster promises made and then cruelly forgotten. Presiding Officer, today's debate is an issue that cuts to the very heart of fairness, justice and respect for those who worked hard all of their lives, only for the promises made to them to be casually discarded by successive UK governments. The women we now know as WASPI women, those born in the 1950s, have been so cruelly let down by changes to the state pension age. And let me make myself clear, as many of my colleagues already have, I stand firmly with the WASPI women in their ongoing fight for justice. These are women who did everything we asked of them. They raised families, they built communities, they contributed to our economies, only to have their retirement plans ripped from under them with little notice and no meaningful consultation. To make matters worse, those same women were promised support from every Labour candidate in Scotland during last year's general election, only once again to be let down. The UK Government, whether it's led by Tories or Labour, has consistently failed these women. In fact, this issue proves everything that is wrong with Westminster politics. Decisions made without regard for the human impact and unwillingness to admit when mistakes have been made, and a complete lack of empathy for those affected. The pension changes introduced by the 1995 and 2011 Pensions Act were not just poorly communicated, they were catastrophically handled. Women who were just years away from retirement suddenly found they had to work longer, sometimes by as much as 6 years, with no time to plan for financial or emotional consequences. Many of these women, Presiding Officer, now find themselves in financial hardship through no fault of their own. And what was Westminster done to address this? The answer is simple, Presiding Officer: nothing. The Tories have dismissed the WASPI women's concerns with cold indifference, while Labour, for all its rhetoric, has failed to offer any credible plan to right this incredible wrong. Whether it's a red rosette or blue rosette, the message from Westminster for these women is the same: we don't care. The WASPI women are people we know. They're in our communities, and many of them will be members of our own family. They're not just asking for charity, they're asking for what they are owed. Let's be clear, this is not just about the money, although that is critical. It is about the recognition, it's about justice, and it's about treating people with the respect they deserve after decades of hard work. It is often said, Presiding Officer, that society should be judged by how it treats its most vulnerable. By this measure, Westminster has failed miserably. But it's good to hear tonight at today's debate that the SNP and some colleagues in this chamber will continue to stand with the WASPI women in their fight for justice. Westminster may have let them down, but let's hope the people of Scotland do not.
Thank you, Mr Adam. I now call Mercedes Villalba to be followed by Regan. Ms Villalba.
Good evening, Presiding Officer, and thank you for calling me to speak in tonight's debate on compensation for the WASPI women. I'm privileged to represent the North East region, which is home to Linda Carmichael, the WASPI Scotland Chair, and I'm grateful to Linda and the other WASPI delegates for travelling to Parliament last month and for speaking to me about their campaign for pension justice. I heard from them firsthand about the hardship of needing to find unexpected work to make ends meet and the impact on their faith in the system after seeing the retirement they'd worked so hard for slip further and further away. And of course, this didn't just affect them. It meant less time for their grandchildren, for volunteering and restrictions on their spending, all of which, of course, has had an impact on their communities and the local economy. But those I spoke to also had hope, and it was clear that through their work on the campaign, they'd found kindred spirits, a strengthened belief in what they could achieve together, and a contagious confidence in their cause. Presiding Officer, this is the power of collective organising, and it's a power that's available to us all, whatever our circumstance. So I'd like to put on record my thanks to every single member of the campaign in Scotland and across the UK for their determination and their persistence in the face of injustice. And to the women in the gallery tonight, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. I know that the WASPI campaigners won't give up, and neither will we. Because as we've heard tonight, women born in the 1950s were not properly informed of the rise in their state pension age. The Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman investigation found that the Department for Work and Pensions, the DWP, failed to communicate the changes accurately, adequately and in a timely manner. And it concluded that women affected are owed compensation on the grounds of maladministration by the DWP. That's why it was right for the UK Government to recognise the injustice suffered by these women and to apologise for that maladministration that affected hundreds of thousands of women in Scotland and across the UK. But while the steps that the Government has set out to ensure this does not happen again are welcome, an apology simply is not enough. That's why I'm supporting the motion laid in this Parliament by my colleague Katy Clark, which calls on the UK Government to reconsider its decision not to award compensation for women against state pension inequality and to look at options to provide these women with a compensation award. Because when we speak about the WASPI campaign or the WASPI injustice, we're not just talking about injustice to 1950s women, we're talking about an injustice to all of us, to our communities and to our society, because this issue affects us all. So when the WASPI women win, we will all win. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Villalba. I now call Ash Regan to be followed by Claire Haughey. Ms Regan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I commend Mr Gibson for bringing this important debate to the Chamber, and I also would like to welcome the WASPI women campaigners to the gallery this evening. So tonight we debate another injustice inflicted upon women in our country, the betrayal of WASPI women. And WASPI is an injustice inflicted not by accident, but by deliberate government failure. These women, born in the 1950s, they worked hard, they did everything right, they planned for their retirement, they contributed to our society in every way. And their resilience in the face of this injustice is truly inspiring. But this is not a matter of policy. It is, of course, a matter of principle. When governments make decisions that affect millions of lives, they have a duty to communicate them clearly, fairly and in good time. And that did not happen. Too many women were left unaware, unprepared and unsupported as they faced years of financial hardship. And now, when these women seek justice, they are met with excuses and delays. The failure to properly inform WASPI women has had real, lasting consequences, forcing many to work longer than they had planned, to struggle financially and, in too many cases, to suffer alone in silence. And this is not just an issue of pensions, it's an issue of fairness. It's about ensuring that governments do not change the rules without warning, that people are treated with dignity and that those affected by these changes receive the recognition and the compensation that they deserve. And Scotland cannot stand idly by while our mothers, grandmothers and sisters are treated with such contempt. The UK Government must be held accountable, and proper support for Scotland's WASPI women must be delivered. The Ombudsman found, in the light of UK Government failures, that the women should be given compensation, saying that the UK Government must do the right thing, and so they should. Excuses and delays from the Tories, and now more broken promises from the Labour Party. The UK Government must do the right thing, but I'm very glad this evening that this Parliament is sending out that message loud and clear.
Thank you, Ms Regan. And I now call Claire Haughey, who will be the last speaker before I ask the Minister to respond. Ms Haughey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Just before Christmas, dozens of WASPI women from across Scotland gathered outside Parliament in protest, and I was pleased to host them when they met with the First Minister, the Cabinet Secretary for Social Justice and numerous MSPs. This meeting took place only 2 days after the shock announcement that the UK Labour Government was to ignore the PHSO's recommendations and fail to provide them with compensation. Now, in my Rutherglen constituency, alarm bells were starting to ring at the end of the summer when it was revealed that our local MP, a UK Government Minister, wrote to a constituent to say that he didn't believe that the universal compensation would be right. He was one of the scores of Labour MPs and Labour parliamentary candidates right across the country who appeared to support the WASPI Scotland campaign before the general election. Alongside Keir Starmer, the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall, the Scottish Secretary Ian Murray, Labour MPs and MSPs had merrily posed for photographs for years, even signing WASPI pledges to state that they supported fair and fast compensation. My constituent and the coordinator of WASPI Glasgow and Lanarkshire, Anne Potter, did not mince her words when she appeared live on the BBC the day after the UK Government's announcement. Anne said she was absolutely disgusted. The decision was a real slap in the face. And she said she felt Labour had led WASPI women up the garden path. They signed our pledges, they showed interest, and when I heard that announcement yesterday, which came out of the blue, I was absolutely flabbergasted. Presiding Officer, let's be clear that the UK Government has made an unprecedented political choice. They have ignored the clear recommendations of an independent watchdog. This, of course, will leave many asking what is the point of an ombudsman if ministers can simply ignore decisions. But for the WASPI campaigners that came to Parliament last month and the WASPI women across Scotland and the UK, this is much more than a hypothetical exercise. When I met with constituents of mine who were affected by changes to their pensions, they've told me deeply personal and sensitive stories. They have told me about financial and emotional distress that they've suffered, about how they were forced to work past their expected retirement age or live on significantly less income than they'd planned, and how this had intersected with their families, their caring responsibilities and their health and well-being. Now, of course, we have Labour backbench MPs and the Scottish Labour leader lining up to say that they're disappointed with the UK Government's decision. WASPI women certainly do not need their words of disappointment. What they need is justice. Despite the initial shock of the UK Government's sudden announcement, it was clear that those women who visited Parliament in December are not taking this lying down. The fact that many of the women affected will be digesting and coping with the same government ripping away their winter fuel payment this year must only intensify their sense of injustice. They're not going anywhere, and Keir Starmer's government have not heard the last of this issue. The UK Government are also feeling the pressure from charities and third sector organisations. The Charity Director of Age UK has said it simply isn't credible that they've chosen to contradict the Ombudsman's painstaking report. Presiding Officer, over 21,000 women in South Lanarkshire have lost out in pension payments, completely upending their lives. They deserve so much better than the Labour Government's betrayal of this trust. And I'm proud to be in a party that has shown them unwavering support and will continue to do so. The SNP will keep to our principled position and concrete commitment in support of the WASPI women, and will continue to hold the Labour Government to account until these women receive the justice they deserve.
Thank you, Ms Haughey. And I now call on Minister Tom Arthur to respond to the debate. Around 7 minutes, please, Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I begin by thanking my colleague Kenny Gibson for bringing this important motion to the Chamber, and can I also put on record my thanks and appreciation to parliamentary colleagues who have contributed to this debate. And can I also pay tribute to the WASPI women who join us here this evening in the gallery. I have been privileged in my capacity as a constituency MSP for Renfrewshire South to have ongoing engagement with the local WASPI campaign in my area, hosting meetings in my constituency office, attending and speaking at events, and of course engaging in Parliament. And so this is an issue that has gripped me, of its importance, of its urgency and of its utter necessity for some time. And one of the things that has emerged for me very clearly over the course of the last hour that Parliament has been considering this motion is the fundamental issue of trust. You pay into the system, you play by the rules, you expect to be treated fairly, and then, when you're not, you engage in the democratic process, you organise, campaign, you gain concessions and commitments from those seeking your votes to be your parliamentarians and to form a government. You see your position partially, but important in a crucial aspect, vindicated by an independent ombudsman, and then dismissed. Trust is a precious commodity in all aspects of life, and particularly so in politics. And we are seeing the consequences in many jurisdictions of when trust is eroded and trust is lost. But yet, some 30 years on, when these events were set in motion, WASPI women are here tonight, joining us in Parliament, a Parliament that didn't even exist when this issue started, campaigning, making their presence felt. So I want to put on record on behalf of the Scottish Government my sincere thanks, not just to the WASPI women for what they have done in campaigning, but for serving as a role model to all of us about how you seek to advance progress in society and to engage with the democratic system. Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government has been absolutely consistent in our calls for the UK Government to right the historic wrong suffered by WASPI women, and to do so now or at the earliest opportunity. When the PHSO report was published in March, we immediately called for the then UK Government to take action quickly and compensate the women impacted. To reiterate, the report identified the DWP's failure to act promptly in writing to the women impacted by the changes in state pension age and called for compensation to rectify that maladministration. And in the last debate on this topic, there was a clear consensus across the Chamber, as there has been this evening, that compensation should be paid to those women as soon as possible. After the recent UK general election, there was hope that the incoming Labour Government would finally step up and acknowledge the failings of the UK Government and properly compensate the women affected, taking into account the financial hardship they have faced. However, as we have heard time and time again this evening, that has not been the case. The PHSO report recommended that the DWP compensate women born in the 1950s by between £1,000 and £2,950 each. The last UK Government failed to make any clear commitment to delivering that compensation, pledging only to consider the PHSO report. Now, as we have heard from a number of colleagues, there are innumerable documented commitments made by not only parliamentarians within the Labour group at Westminster, but within the Labour UK Government, signifying their support for WASPI women. So it really is an indefensible position that the UK Government has. One cannot give these cast-iron commitments and fail to act upon them. It is a clear betrayal of trust. Now, to be clear, Presiding Officer, the findings by the PHSO and the compensation recommended is because DWP mishandled the communication of the equalisation of state pension age. It does not take into account the money which these women have lost from not receiving their state pension when they expected it, but is a payment purely to address the handling of this change. So this clearly puts the responsibility squarely at the door of the UK Government to right their own wrongs and compensate the women who were unfairly affected by this maladministration. The Scottish Government and MPs in my own party have previously called on the UK Government to publish a compensation framework for WASPI women set at £3,000 to £10,000 or more, something the WASPI campaigners also feel would be a fairer outcome, given the wider financial hardship this devastating maladministration has caused. But I touched on the political commitments that had been given by those who now occupy office in the UK Government, but there is also a corporate and institutional responsibility for the UK Government, because it was their agency, the DWP, whose actions have led to this situation. That is a responsibility on them. And if it is not a willingness to address the clear errors, the clear maladministration that has been made, again, that erodes trust, it erodes faith, it erodes belief in our institutions. Presiding Officer, there have been many outstanding contributions across the chamber this evening. Kenny Gibson expressed the anger of his constituents and also clearly, as many others have, the impact upon WASPI women, the financial hardship and the impact on their families as well. Christine Grahame documented the number of women within her constituency who have been impacted as well. Douglas Ross set out his position, his long-standing position, and support for the WASPI women, even when it put him at odds with his own party, as did both Carol Mochan, Katy Clark and Mercedes Villalba. And Beatrice Wishart set out her party's position clearly as well. Bob Doris spoke of his constituents, Liz, with a dignified determination and also an expression of willingness to find practical solutions, but also an absolute determination to fight. And I think that is the spirit in which this campaign has been conducted and will continue to be conducted. Many other members, including Maggie Chapman and Karen Adams, spoke about the fundamental question of justice, the highly gendered nature of this, and the gross inequalities that women born in the 1950s faced throughout their working lives, which just compounds the sense of injustice that this case brings to bear. Presiding Officer, I am grateful to members from across the chamber for their contributions. It has been a very important debate, and as George Adams said, this is about fairness, it is about justice, it is about respect, and it is those words which absolutely, I think, embody the ethos, the spirit and the determination of the WASPI campaign. I can assure the WASPI campaign that the Scottish Government continues to stand shoulder to shoulder with them, as does the Scottish National Party. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes the debate, and I close this meeting.